Trisha, what is the
So dumb.
Trisha, what is the force that causes objects to fall to the ground?
Girl, you better.
I know this because my titties are low thanks to gravity.
Yay! A personal anecdote.
Can we just also say we don't actually need gravity? But that's a different thing.
What do you mean by
I
that?
saw someone do this. Was this a TikTok? We were watching something where someone's like, we don't actually need gravity. We were watching this with me. Like, we actually don't need it.
What do you mean that we don't need gravity?
What if it was never invented?
Invented by who?
Sir Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton created gravity?
Whoever created gravity, someone did, but we don't actually need it.
There
Like,
was
we
a
could have
time
just all.
There was a time on Earth before gravity existed?
Yes. Who created gravity, babe? Dan.
It was Isaac Newton. You're right.
You were in the right ballpark. Sir Isaac Newton perhaps first defined and discovered gravity.
What do you mean we don't need gravity? I'm curious about that
We
statement.
just don't need it.
But like, what do you mean?
The moon doesn't have gravity.
It does. All bodies, all celestial, all bodies,
All
you
mass.
have gravity.
Anything with mass has gravity.
In fact, some would say you have a sizable amount of gravity.
What's that mean? I'm fat? You're calling me fat now.
Yeah, attractive. Thank you, Moses.
Well, you're fat.
We've got quite a large pay dispute happening with our Australian women's soccer team at the moment. Is it frustrating for you as someone who's so prominent in your sport? And we heard you say on the Ellen show the other day you are the richest fighter in UFC, that sort of thing is still going on?
I think that how much you get paid should have something to do with how much money you bring in. I'm the highest paid fighter, not because Dina and Lorenzo wanted to do something nice for the ladies. They do it because I bring in the highest numbers. They do it because I make them the most money. And I think that the money that they make should be proportionate to the money that they bring in.
Because that's all guys want. All guys want is pussy. Swear
What?
to God.
What?
No. Let me rephrase that. Shitty men want pussy, and that's all they want from you. Hire guys that are worth more, that will benefit your life more. They're not just gonna want pussy from you, and that's a fact.
Or could it be that the men that only want sex from women is because that's all that the women have to offer? Because for me, if pussy is all you're offering, pussy is all I want.
Yeah.
Just like, you know what? How many times you've gotten to a club into VIP for free when some ugly chicks had to pay full price?
Is that my fault?
No. I've asked how many times it happened before you go down that path.
I mean, plenty of times in Miami.
Exactly, but that's not fair, is it?
Well, please don't forget I'm not from here.
But that's not the point, ma'am. That's not fair, is it?
I also don't care about those things.
But so you only care about fairness when it doesn't benefit you.
I just don't go to clubs that often.
But that's not the point. I asked you, how many times you've gone to a club where you got in for free, where ugly chicks or less attractive chicks had to pay? And you know that's happened. You didn't say, I'm still, excuse me, sir. Even though I'm attractive, I demand that you charge me full price. You're okay with the double standards that benefit you. But the ones you don't like, you just throw at the wind, use sign language, shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right to deflect and dismiss guys who are normally intimidated by this thing. I'm not. I'm just challenging your positions. You're okay with it not being fair when it benefits you.
Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language?
Well,
It's just interesting
I
because
prefer to use precise language.
it's interesting because you come into this conversation, trying to hold this moral superiority, but then I
try to be moral when I can, but
Right, but when I use inclusive language, which it only takes a couple extra syllables to use inclusive language,
To include
and
who?
it seems to include people who don't, identify as women but can become pregnant.
So, like a person who's born a woman and then identifies as a man
Mhm.
and is pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in order to be a moral person, I need to accept the idea that a man, someone who is born a man and looks like a man, can really become a woman. That's a prerequisite of my being a moral person.
I mean, yes. To me it is, because if you are trying to deny someone of their identity and deny what their life experience is, then that doesn't seem like a moral stance to me. I want to be accepting and I want to respect people's life experiences and respect the way that they want to identify and respect the way that they want to present themselves to the world.
Bronte, I would
Yes.
like to identify, I do identify actually, as the correct person on this issue of abortion. I identify as being correct and more correct than you on this issue. And I would just ask that you accept and affirm my identity. Do you?
Well, you are not a medical professional, and abortion and pregnancy
No, I'm
is
just
a
talking about my
medical
identity.
concern. That's not your identity.
That is my identity. I promise you, that's my identity.
You don't want to get married at all? You don't want a
Not
family or
yet.
children?
Yes, but in the future, but no now.
Well, you're 28, right?
Yes.
When do you want to have kids?
35 maybe.
Well, at 35, 90, from a biological standpoint, at 35 years old, around 90% of your eggs are gone. And your ability to bring a child to term comes down a lot.
I don't think so. Age is a number.
I mean, you can say you don't think so, but realistically speaking, your chances of having a child bringing them to
Freeze the
term
eggs.
at 35, that doesn't work often, and it's very expensive.
I don't know. I want to enjoy my life, so I'm not ready.
Teenage boys now, they are so terrified of the consequences of putting a foot out of line. It's hard enough being a young teenager, working out how things are, working out how to do dating and all of that, without the terror that if you touch in the wrong place at the wrong time, you may find that your whole life is destroyed.
I
and there
like
is
that
far
terror.
too much. Well,
I like that.
As a
I
mother
think
of
that
a
men
teenage
should be
boy, I
frightened.
don't like
Really?
that
That's
terror.
I do.
Malicious thing I've ever heard.
That is
I think that
awful.
men should be frightened
I think
to
you'd
touch
feel
women in a way
differently
that
if you
they're
were,
not
if
comfortable
you were.
with.
But we're talking about
Yeah, but we're not
teenage
talking
years,
about. We're
children.
not talking about.
We're talking
but
about
it's an
young
interesting
children.
thing that you see. I would say that attitude actually is part of the problem too.
It
That
is.
that's to me toxic femininity.
It is.
That is saying you should all be terrified, you men, if you put one.
Of assaulting.
Well, I think we all understand what sexual
What is an
assault is.
assault?
What Isabel's talking about is that young teenage clumsiness
really
in many
hard.
cases, which is now being recategorized as assault. Is that a problem?
It's not being recategorized as assault. It's always been assault. It's just we're finally talking about it.
I don't agree with that. But I do think it's really hard for a 16, 17-year-old boy now in this environment to know even how to start
they are all
having kind of some
terrified.
kind of physical relationship with a woman.
Those good boys are all terrified. I know that from talking to my son. He's just like, I'm just not going there. Is that healthy?
Yes, I
The
think
other
it is
point-
actually. I think it's better to not have a physical relationship than to have one that could ruin a woman's life.
But then how do they ever start?
Well, don't. If you're not 100%
Don't.
sure,
What are we going
don't.
for?
What are you going to have? A bunch of neutered boys who
But
never
it's
had...
so obvious.
We actually
It's
do
sort
have
of
that.
like-
Gen Z is having far less sexual relationships
Yes,
than any
they
ever before.
are. It's true.
And I'm also interested, I mean, like George and I look at the data and I look at the studies, and I'm really also very much interested in studies like the analysis that was done by the American Psychological Society, which looked at 45 analysis of whether there's sex difference over 20 years. And its conclusion was that men and women are basically alike in terms of personality, in terms of cognitive ability, in terms of leadership. But what it did find was that media depictions of men and women as fundamentally different perpetuate misconceptions, as does workplace bias.
Oh, God, so it's my fault.
So, no, well, you know, you're leaving soon. It's okay.
Men and women actually are more the same than they are different. But the issue is that small differences at the population level can turn into very large differences at the extreme. So, for example, men and women are broadly similar with regards to aggression, although men tilt a little bit more towards aggression. So that if you picked a random person out of the population, male and female, and you guessed that the male was more aggressive, you'd be right 60% of the time. But if you take the 1 in 100 most aggressive people, they're all male. And that's why the overwhelming proportion of people who are in prisons are male. Now, do you want to equalize that, just out of curiosity? What about bricklayers? They're 99% male. And we've got about 3/4 of the population now in universities in the humanities and social sciences are female.
Yeah.
Are we going to equalize that? And men work longer hours. They work more dangerous jobs. They're more likely to move. They're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to participate in jobs in the STEM fields that are scalable. They make more money for those reasons. And that's all hidden under the idea that the reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender.